Good afternoon. I'm Mrs. Wilson, principal at Miller South School for the Visual and Performing Arts, and it has been truly my pleasure to lead a dedicated group of staff to guide students who have so many wonderful gifts and can do so many wonderful things. This year, Miller South is honored to host the 2013 celebration for the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. I hope you enjoy the students' performances. Everything will be dedicated to honoring the dream of Dr. King. Dr. King would have celebrated his 84th birthday today, and despite his assassination 4 decades ago in 1968, his words and his passion resonate today. He believes strongly in freedom and equality, hope and faith, and that all people should have the opportunities to excel at their very, very best. Anything that they wanted to do, they should have that opportunity to do so. Today we have some special guests with us that I would like to acknowledge. We have Mr. Billy Soul. He's the Deputy Mayor of Community Relations from the City of Akron. We have Dr. Ellen McWilliams, Assistant Superintendent, Akron Public Schools. Mr. Mark Black, Director of Secondary Education, Akron Public Schools. And Mrs. Carla Sibley, Office of Community Relations, Director, Akron Public Schools. We're going to begin our program with Lift Every Voice and Sing. If you have a program, the words to the first verse is on the back. The music will be provided by one of our students, Kofi Boache. Please stand.
Jazz music is the only uniquely American art form that owes its roots to the history of African American music in the late 1800s. Today we're going to pay tribute to two of the top composers of that genre, Count Basie. We're going to do April in Paris, and Duke Ellington, Do Nothing Till You Hear From Me. We hope you enjoy our tunes today.
My name is Sarah Christman, and I'm one of the dance teachers here at Miller South. The next piece that you will see is a dance piece that is created by myself and the students that you will see on stage. The piece is entitled Dreams, and we created this piece back in September. And when we were creating this piece, I asked my students to think of a dream or an aspiration that they have for their lives. So that is the theme of this dance. May I now present the 8th period dance class. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Wendy Duke, and I'm the drama teacher here at Miller South School. And I feel today, on Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday, the urge to testify. I was 12 years old when Martin Luther King gave his speech, and I vividly remember my family and I sitting down in front of the black and white TV in our living room and being incredibly moved by that speech. And my family would always have little family talks. And I remember that we talked about how integration was not something that we waited for. We weren't going to just sit around and let it happen. We were going to reach out. My father, shortly thereafter, who was a bricklayer, started working for the only black contractor in northeastern Ohio. My mother took a job at the University of Akron at the Institute for Civic Education. And there she was in charge of programs that brought people from around the world to the university every summer. And our family became the host family for all these gentlemen who were water engineers. They were from Kenya, Somali, Puerto Rico, Asia, Pakistan, all over the world. And we would get together every weekend and share stories from various cultures, songs. We learned to play games from other lands. And it was the most wonderful lesson for a child growing up in the 60s, because we learned that everybody was human and everybody was wonderful and we could all work together. My first teaching job in acting was for the Akron Urban League. I was still in college at the University of Akron. And my first class, I had 48-year-old boys in my drama class. And I was the only white person in that class. And I showed them how to play some games, and they taught me that summer so much about their lives and their world. It was a great beginning to my teaching career. Today, I have 38 fourth and fifth graders who are going to come up and perform Martin Luther King's speech for you. And as you are watching them, I hope you feel as I feel that Mr. King's speech is coming true, that little black children and little white children are at last working together on equal grounds. So fourth and fifth graders, if you would come to the stage.
I'm happy to join with you today, and we will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. 5 years ago, a great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand today, signed the Emancipation Proclamation.
This momentous decree came as a great big and light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames of withering injustice.
It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity.
But 100 years later, the Negro still is not free. 100 years later,
the life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination.
100 years later,
the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity.
100 years later,
the Negro is still languishing in the corners of American society and finds himself in exile in his own land.
So we have come here today to dramatize a shameful condition.
In a sense, we have come to our nation's capital to cash a check.
When the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they were signing a promissory note to which every American was to fall heir.
This note was a promise that all men, yes, black men as well as white men, would be guaranteed the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
It is obvious today that America has defaulted on this promissory note insofar as her citizens of color are concerned.
Instead of honoring this sacred obligation, America has given the Negro people a bad check. A check that has come back marked
insufficient funds.
But we refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt.
We refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in the great vault of opportunity of this nation.
So we have come to cash this check, a check that will give us upon demand the riches of freedom and security of justice. We have also come to this hollow spot to remind America of the fierce urgency of now.
Now is the time to make real the promises of democracy. Now is the time to rise from the dark and desolate valley of segregation to the sunlit path of racial justice. Now is the time to lift our nation from the quicksands of racial injustice to the solid rock of brotherhood. Now is the time to make justice a reality for all of God's children. It would be fatal for the nation to overlook the urgency of the moment. This sweltering of the Negro's legitimate discontent will not pass until there is an invigorating autumn of freedom and equality. 1963 is not an end, but a beginning.
Those who hoped that the Negro needed a blow off steam and will now be content will have a rude awakening if the nation returns to business as usual.
There will be neither rest nor tranquility in America until the Negro is granted his citizenship rights.
The whirlwinds of revolt will continue to shake the foundations
Of our nation until the bright day of justice emerges.
But there is something that I must say to my people who stand on the warm threshold which leads into the palace of justice. In the process of gaining our rightful place, we must not be guilty of wrongful deeds. Let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from a cup of bitterness and hatred. We must forever conduct our struggle on the high plains of dignity and discipline. We must not allow our creative protests to degenerate into physical violence. Again and again, we must rise to the majestic heights of meeting physical force with soul force.
The marvelous new militancy, which has engulfed the Negro community, must not lead us to a distrust of all white people. For many of our white brothers, as evidenced by their presence here today, have come to realize that their destiny is tied up with our destiny.
They have come to realize that their freedom is inextricably bound to our freedom. We cannot walk alone. As we walk, we must make a pledge that we shall always march ahead. We cannot turn back. There are those who are asking the devotees of civil rights, when will you be satisfied? We can never be satisfied.
As long as the Negro is the victim of the unspeakable horrors of police brutality,
we can never be satisfied. As long as our bodies, heavy with the fatigue of travel, cannot gain lodging in the motels of the highways and the hotels of the cities, we cannot be satisfied.
As long as the Negro's basic mobility is from a smaller ghetto to a larger one.
We can never be satisfied.
As long as our children are stripped of their selfhood and robbed of their dignity by signs saying,
For whites only, we cannot be satisfied. As long as a Negro in Mississippi cannot vote and a Negro in New York believes he has nothing for which to vote. No, we are not satisfied, and we will not be satisfied until justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream.
I am not unmindful that some of you have come from great trials and tribulations. Some of you have come fresh from narrow jail cells. Some of you have come from areas where your quest for freedom left you battered by the storms of persecution and staggered by the winds of police brutality. You have been the veterans of creative suffering. Continue to work with the faith that unearned suffering is redemptive.
Go back to Mississippi. Go back to Alabama. Go back to South Carolina. Let us not wallow in the valley of despair.
I say to you today, my friends, so even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream.
I have a dream
that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
I have a dream
that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood.
I have a dream
That one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice.
I have a dream
That one day my four little children will live in a nation that will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character.
I have a dream today. I have a dream
That one day down in Alabama with its vicious racists, with its governor dripping the words of interposition and nullification. One day, right there in Alabama, little black boys and little black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and little white girls as brothers and sisters.
I have a dream today. I have a dream
That one day, every valley shall be exalted, every hill and mountain shall be made low, the rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together.
This is our hope.
This is the faith that I go back to South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood.
With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day.
This will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with a new meaning.
My country sings of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing, land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside, let freedom ring.
And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true.
So let freedom ring from the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire. Let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York. Let freedom ring from the hiking Alleghenies of Pennsylvania. Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. Let freedom ring from the herbaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom
That was very, very powerful. I have been to Martin Luther King-oriented celebrations since probably 1983. Do you know that's when the Martin Luther King Day became a national holiday? And I don't know if I have ever been at one that has so beautifully taken the words, the meaning, the music, the inspirational dance, and put it in a way that actually goes to the soul of me, and I bet everyone in this room. So thank you. Let's give everyone another round of applause. So we heard the students talk about and chant, "Now is the time." And as we take all of the inspiration that we just experienced and we think about now is the time, what does that mean to all of us? In 1983, our country came together, and this wasn't an easy process, to pass the law to create the national holiday honoring the achievements and the vision and the dream of Martin Luther King. And interestingly, for about 11 years, we celebrated that, and we honored the achievements. And President Reagan is the one who signed in 1983, making this a national holiday. But 11 years later, President Clinton signed a bill that actually created a service day in coordination with this federal holiday, and having the Martin Luther King Service Day. Because what Martin Luther King taught us was to honor the gifts that we have. And the folks in this room, you have just witnessed some incredible gifts of students, and all of the students in here, you bring amazing gifts to this school every day. The faculty here bring the gifts of teaching to you every day. And what Dr. King taught us was to take those gifts and turn that around, and the honor is to serve others with whatever gifts that we have. And I want to read to you my favorite quote from Dr. King. He said, "Everybody can be great because anybody can serve. You don't have to have a college degree to serve. You don't have to make your subject and verb agree to serve. You only need a heart full of grace and a soul generated by love." So what this day is actually all about, what Dr. King lived and breathed every day and in every speech that he delivered, and all of his teachings across this country and actually across the world, is to serve. His challenge to all of us on Monday, or from now to Monday, Monday's not a day to take off and just watch TV all day and have fun. The challenge is to find a way to serve others. And that could be as simple as visiting an elderly neighbor on your street. It could be singing one of the beautiful songs that we heard here to a lonely neighbor. It could be collecting clothes from your friends and your family and delivering them to the Haven of Rest downtown. It could be collecting food and bringing it to the food pantry. There are a million ways that we can serve. But the challenge for all of us that Dr. King leaves with us always around this time, but throughout our days, is to find ways to be very purposeful, to take the love in our heart and to share it with others. And I think the students gave us the spirit and the inspiration today to take what they shared with us and those gifts and to share them now with your friends, your family, your neighbors, everyone that you come into contact from now through Monday, but then most importantly, every day after that. So thank you, Miller South, for hosting today, and thank you, everyone, for being here, and most importantly, thank you to Dr. Martin Luther King for inspiring us to do the good work today that we're about to do and moving forward. Thank you.
Well, this concludes our program. I want to say thank you so very much to all of the community members that were willing and able to come out and to take part in the ceremony.